let's talk about backlog refinement. Backlog refinement process. The inputs that we're going to see are starter stories with description, some acceptance criteria that the product owner is ready to refine with the team. We'll do the backlog refinement process, and our outputs are going to be user stories with a description, refined acceptance criteria, and an effort estimate in story points. The flow of backlog refinement is that the product owner is going to alert the team of the upcoming stories for the next refinement session. These are typically the top priority stories in the backlog that have not yet been refined. At the refinement session, the product owner is going to present those stories with their description and the starter acceptance criteria. Then the team's going to start working with that product owner to clarify the intent and scope of the story by asking questions. As they ask those questions, they may capture additional acceptance criteria. They may capture a short list of tasks to help understand the scope. They may find dependencies that they need to capture, either internal or external to the team. Any of those extra details we can capture as part of the story to make sure that everybody has that shared understanding when we go to implement that story. As we discover dependencies on occasion, we need to determine if they're internal or external to our team. If they're internal, we'll capture an additional user story and refine that user story as well. Make sure to sequence it to come before the dependent story. If it's external, we'll have a conversation with that other team that we need their help in resolving this dependency and get a commitment from them as to when they can complete that story so that we'll know when we can be ready to start work on our user story. At the end of the refinement of each story, we're going to size it in story points that represents that completed understanding of the scope of this story. The goal for backlog refinement is that we want to maintain 1 to 2 iterations worth of ready user stories for the team that they can pull at any time to start new work. Frequency, we tend to see this happen 1 to 2 times per iteration for 1 to 2 hours. This is going to depend on the health of the backlog. If we are below 1 iteration worth of ready user stories, we may need to hold more refinement sessions or hold them for a longer duration. If we're easily keeping up with 2 iterations worth of ready user stories, we may decrease our frequency of backlog refinement or decrease the duration. So some warning signs that we need to be watching out for to know if this session is in trouble. If we have less than 1 iteration worth of ready user stories, our backlog is getting pretty thin. When we get to the next iteration planning, we may not have enough stories ready for the team to plan. Secondly, refinement occurs infrequently. We run the risk of not having enough ready user stories if we're not holding this session regularly. And lastly, few team members attend. We really want to make sure we're capturing the perspective of as many team members as possible on each story so that we get the best clarification and understanding that we can on the scope. If we don't have many team members attending, we're going to be losing out on their perspectives. So how do our team roles interact with backlog refinement? Our Scrum Master is going to facilitate the flow of refinement. This includes time boxing so we don't spend too much time on any single story. If we are spending too much time, they'll encourage us to move on, capture some clarification questions we need to ask, and we'll return to it at a later time. They'll also capture any questions that we need to investigate external to the team. This may be with subject matter experts or product managers. The product owner is driving which stories we're going to be refining in each session. They'll be providing clarification on the scope of the story and adding any additional details based on the discussion they have with the team. And our delivery team is going to discuss stories with the product owner to gain clarification of understanding of the scope of the user story, as well as the intent that we're trying to achieve. They will also size the user story to represent the effort required to complete this piece of work.